Little story about how I did this at Juilliard, where I taught for a number of years. I, 15 years ago, started what is called the Art and Education program there, which was a way to train performing artists while they were learning the skills of their artistic craft to become what we call teaching artists at the same time. So threaded into their artist development was learning how to be an effective educator engager. And when I started it at Juilliard, they were very happy to have this little program off in the corner of the building. There was a lot of condescension about it. You know, oh, isn't it cute that those artists who like kitties want to do something off in the corner of the building? And a lot of condescension that, you know, they weren't going to have very big artistic careers because they like children, you know, and because they think education is like important. So we were happy to live under the radar for the first 5 years of this program until they discovered two things. Number one, these artists actually started to have significant artistic careers. And second, they reported back to their studio faculty that what they were learning as educators was making them better artists. This was the moment the heretics assaulted the gates of the Vatican. And suddenly the institution had to deal with it because it was a real philosophical challenge, saying these extra artistic ideas of education, entrepreneurialism, advocacy, communication actually have a direct impact into what you do as an artist. And the reason I tell this story is that it really sets what I would say for us in the US as the high watermark we're looking for, which is that you develop these extra skills, not just so you can get some money in your career to let you do the art stuff that you like, but recognizing that there is a catalytic relationship between all the parts of an artist's life, and that, in fact, what you do as an educator feeds what you do as an artist, and what you do as an artist makes you a more engaged educator. And it's this back and forthness that makes a sustainable 21st century artist career. When I would talk to those artists about, well, so how does what you're learning as an educator you do as an artist? They were very clear on the skills they developed. They would say, I ask different questions of myself in rehearsal. Idea of what a musical program actually is. I think of audiences differently. I come up with whole new ideas for the way my art form can engage people in communities. So our aspiration is this notion of a 21st century artist that uses the multiple things an artist has to do to make a living, but that it all feeds that artistic core. And the question now, because the studio practice has been the most recalcitrant piece of the whole evolutionary puzzle in our artist training, the question becomes, in what way can studio practice more closely model and be an effective introduction into a 21st century artist's world and life? And there's been lots of experimentation around this. I would like to say that the experimentation in studio practice is as robust as it is in other areas of our universities and our schools of art, but indeed it's not. There are a few heroic maniacs, probably like those gathered in your hall there today, who are the inquirers, the experimenters that are looking for the new answers for how to embody what we want artists to be bringing into the world, how to embody that in what lives in the studio. And just before I take a question from you, let me posit one truth I believe and often teach when I'm given an opportunity to work with whole faculties. I believe that I call it the law of 80%. It sounds very significant when I phrase it that way. The number 80% is a made-up statistic, but what it captures is what I think is a genuine truth, that 80% of what we teach is who we are. 80% of what we teach is who we are, who that teacher in the room is as a thinker, an inquirer, as someone who lives within that art form, who's someone who formulates questions and practices. That is where we are really creating an induction into the kind of lifelong artistry we have in mind for these training artists. So the question becomes, what do we need to be as the guides of this induction process? What does our 80% need to be in order to be a really authentic welcome into a life as an artist or in the arts in the 21st century?
Thank you very much, Eric. It seems to me I've got two questions at either end of a spectrum. One, what are the implications for government, education and arts funding agencies in what you're saying? And then I suppose, secondly, for us gathered here, what would you suggest as a few tips for how we might reconsider the way in which we deliver our education?
Okay, let me take those both. Tips for... the first, I've had quite a few conversations here in Australia about your funding bodies, my new favorite term. And of course, coming from the US, I am only just riddled with envy about your access to government funding, a poignant subject for us because we have so little of it, which indeed is, I think, an embodiment of how the US public does actually not much respect the artistic offering, and artists in particular are not held in high regard in the US. It's the result of a lot of years of, I think, mistaken practice in the US and way too much art for art's sake and not enough exploration of the relevance of art.